Welcome to Self-Perfected.
Mugs get thrown around the house.
Oh,
So we had to invest in some new mugs
no, that makes sense. Makes
and
sense.
present to you with the first of many in a series. We're going to call this section of the podcast New Mugs.
New mugs. New mugs. I'm looking at your mug. And Christine, we have a new mug in our home, but it's a baby. So there's that. Like new face.
So the mug is a baby.
There you go.
Oh, I get it now. Yeah, okay. All right.
Mug shot.
Mug shots. That's what we'll call this section.
There you go.
Mug
There
shots.
you go. Now we got to get a picture of Trump here.
We make our own cream. We make our own butter.
That's true. Do you make your own fudge?
I do.
So do we. At least, but we don't really call it fudge. We call it poop. It's
That's what I call fudge.
oh, okay. Okay, all right. Then we're on the same page. I saw.
Yeah, go ahead.
I saw you made
Yeah.
a pad thai yesterday. Looked pretty
Yes,
good.
I made a pad thai. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. This particular recipe, because I've made it before, and I've made it before. I liked it better before, except the noodles.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't got the noodles right, and I realized why. This time I got the noodles right.
Oh. What-
I used like the store bought, rice noodles or whatever,
sure.
because there's no way you're gonna make that yourself.
Challenge
But
accepted.
yeah, well, yeah, Katie probably would. But before, when I made them, it says on the box, cook them until they're firm but tender but firm.
Okay.
And I had followed a recipe previously, and they were like, don't overcook them, because they're gonna cook more in the pan. So I kind of got like paranoid that I was gonna overcook it, so
Right.
I undercooked them before.
Okay.
So this time I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna cook it till it's good, and then, and then
Yeah.
it worked out. It worked out.
So okay, when you cooked them before, how did they turn out? Did they come out chewy?
No,
Oh, okay.
why do you not even cook them before at all?
No.
Oh, wait.
It just
Do you mean when I cooked them in the past?
yes, in the past.
Oh, I thought you meant when I cooked them before I put them in the wok.
No, what?
Yeah, I didn't understand because the context. No, like they came out sort of like undercooked, like it was al dente, or not even al dente, but you know what I mean, like that too much.
Like too hard? Like
Yeah,
tough?
like slightly undercooked. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Wow.
because like when you bite it and you get too much resistance.
Yeah. I don't like tough pasta. I don't generally.
No, they're not supposed to be. It was just I thought that if I thought I had to undercook it,
Yeah.
so that way it would cook in the wok.
So it wouldn't get like mushy.
Right, but
Yeah, I got you.
I didn't need to, because it's in there for such a short period of time in the wok. Like it doesn't make
Yeah,
a difference.
Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
Anyway, so I got that right this time. Would change is this particular recipe, you put peanut butter in it. You didn't have to,
Mhm.
but you could. And so the person said they put peanut butter. They did it even though it was optional. So I tried it, but I would have put less next time.
You don't like peanut butter and things.
No, I do. I just don't like it with sweet stuff like chocolate and stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
It was just too much this time. It was good. It was just like it was too creamy. You know?
Christine has this recipe. If you like peanut butter like sauces with like Asian things, Christine has this recipe for deconstructed spring rolls, right? Is that what it is, Christine?
Isn't that just called a salad?
Shut up. Anyway, it's delicious. And it has this like peanut butter sauce that's like spicy and tangy, and like you have like jalapenos in there as well. It's real.
What's deconstructed about it?
So it's got like rice noodles. So it's not a salad. It's like rice noodles. It does have some lettuce in there.
Okay, but it's not like wrapped up.
It's everything
No.
but the wrap.
Got it.
So it's not exactly a salad. And then there's like it's chicken and it's spicy. It's sweet. There's mango. It's so good. There's more things in it than you would have in like a spring roll, like a traditional spring roll. So
Sounds pretty good.
It is very delicious, and I'm craving it right now. So
This is the section of our podcast where we talk about wraps.
Yeah.
We call it that's a rap.
That's a wrap.
No, actually, it's a game where you have to guess: is it a rap or a rap? You
So,
can't lose because as long as you say that's a rap, you win.
hey, there you go. As long as you're not typing it in the chat, then you
True.
win.
As long as you, as long as you learn phonics.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh man. People with their phonics. They love that phonics, right? All right. So what are we gonna talk about today? I had no idea.
When was phonics introduced?
Um no, phonics has been around for a while. It's been around for a while because you got to think. Okay, when Marilyn Yeager Adams, that's her name. Yeah.
90s.
Uh, yeah, she's made that book in the 90s, but she was talking about like the history of kind of the way that our written language became the way that it is. Because in certain cultures, they have characters that they use, which are not phonemic, right? It's just a character that means this thing and that's it. And then you smash a bunch of characters together and you're supposed to devise some meaning from all these characters, right? Like Asian cultures usually have that. And then other languages in the past before that, they would be pictographs, which is very similar to like the kind of like a character, right? Like that. And it was basically like you're associating a picture with some meaning, and then but there's a lot of limitation with that, obviously, right? But then eventually we got to using letters to represent sounds, right? And so in Latin cultures, they're very, very phonetic languages, right? Well, that's excluding French. That's not a very phonetic language. Excluding
In
French.
fact, they kind of do the opposite. They just don't say any letters.
Yeah,
right?
they're just like it'll be a word with a bunch of letters at the end, and they're like, "Yeah, but we don't say that.
Don't say any of those letters.
Those are optional." In fact, if you pronounce that, you're an ass. They're like, "Ooh, yeah." But yeah, and then English is just a hodgepodge of a bunch of different languages. So some of them are like French words where you don't say these letters, and some of them are like you're supposed to say every letter in there. But so I would say whenever Latin, like Rome came into power, at the very least, I don't know. Would you say?
But that doesn't mean phonics as a system of teaching
Oh, true.
to read. That's what I mean.
But okay, how did people learn to read back then? How did they teach them?
Most didn't.
Well, yeah, I know most didn't, but the ones that did, like the priest class, the clergy.
I think you took some kind of magic mushroom and got a download from the
that's it.
Dimensions.
That's it. Yeah, that's the Terence McKenna theory, right? That's was it Talking Ape or something about apes?
No, they probably drilled it into the kids from a very young age. The ones that they wanted to teach, they'd send them, I would assume, or afterwards, and they just took a lot of effort.
And then they had them be scribes. That was like actually a job to be a scribe, or why did they call it a page? I know it's spelled differently, but were they?
It was because it was like the original pager. They would like send the kid running over to like tell the person like, hey, someone's looking for you.
The kid would grab on their hip. They'd be like 6, 9, 8, 8, 3, 2, 3. And they're like, oh, hello. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So that's how that started.
That joke will go over so many people's heads. That's only for older people, I think. Yeah. I don't think anyone younger than me will understand that joke. Maybe Mitch. I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually interesting if you think about children now, or like just anybody now.
Yeah.
Where it's like you live in like the future of like Star Trek fantasy, you know what I mean? Like personal communicators. And like back then it would have been like, wow, can you imagine? And now it's like, what do you mean? Like you didn't have that?
Dude, I made a video recently. I haven't published it yet because I gotta still edit some of it, but talking about what we talked about last week I actually read through the study for screen time for children under 1, right? Holy crap, man. Holy crap. It's a huge study, by the way. It's like, I know they say 7,000, but it was actually originally 20,000 in this study of moms and kids. And they were basically asking them to self-report on how much screen time do you give your kids on a daily basis. And they were classifying screen time as any time with a tablet or a mobile device or watching television, watching a movie, anything like that, video games, all of that, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they were for kids under 1 year old, and the moms are reporting, and they had 4 different categories. It was less than an hour, between an hour and 2 hours, 2 to 4 hours, or more than 4 hours, right? And 50% of them were over an hour, right? 50% were over an hour, with about 30 being 2 to 4. 30 being 1 to 2 hours, and then another 18%, something like that, close to 18%, being 2 to 4, and the rest was above 4 hours a day.
So what percentage was above?
I don't know, about like 4, it said.
4%?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that sounds like such bullshit. Like, you know, that's bullshit.
But
You know what I mean?
That's
I know.
Okay.
It is a self-reporting thing, but
It's
like,
self-reporting.
You know, like,
and hold on. Also, this was in Japan. This study was done in Japan, and this was done previous to COVID. So
previous to iPads, no. Yeah, previous to COVID, yeah.
Previous to COVID is what, and so
not that it really would matter, because in the
discussion,
but it would definitely increase.
They're saying like you can bet this is going to increase after COVID, right. And the reason why it's also significant that it's previous to COVID is because they also followed them at the 2-year mark and the 4-year mark to find out if they have any developmental delays, right? And again, self-reporting, and it was like some astronomical, we're having significant delays, like 2 standard deviations below where they're supposed to be. Like, so that's statistically significant, right? But basically they were saying so many parents, basically all the parents that did over 1 hour were reporting some significant delay in like their speech or communication or their cognitive abilities. The only thing that didn't have like a significant delay was gross motor skills, which is like, okay, the baby can move, right? Like, that's what you expect. But everything else that required some amount of brain power was just like, no, they're delayed. And the parents are reporting this. So again, you can pretty much bet like, they're not like, oh, I just want to over-report that I have a delay. No parent is saying that, you know?
Sure. But also this is, you know, Japan. I hadn't read the study, so I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, in America, it's going to be
way worse.
Because that's why I was like, that's so bullshit. Like,
I know.
I'm sure people are putting their kids on the screens. I would say the average would probably be 4 hours would be like the
for 1-year-olds. 1-year-olds.
I bet it's higher for 1-year-olds here. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know, but it's like, okay, how much waking time does a 1-year-old even have, really? You know, like, they take a lot of naps, you know, like they got to eat at some point. You know, there's other things that need to go on. Can you really just sit your child in front of a screen for that long? And what it was making me look at was, because I was talking about this, and, you know, obviously we have, it's making me look at a few things. But one of the things was, Bernard has this audio where he talks about the disease called leader. Right. And I was bringing this up because I was talking with someone over on Friday or something, and they were asking for some support. And I said, hey, you know, I can give you some support, but at the end of the day, you got to do it. There are certain things that I cannot do for you. We talked about this last week, right? Like, there are certain challenges that you need to go through when you are developing, even a child, There's certain challenges that they have to go through that the parent can't do for them. Like if a child's learning to walk, for instance, and you were to pick them up and move their legs for them, and never let them fall, they're not going to learn to walk.
You can't, because you wouldn't be able to handle the balance of or the point of balance and so forth. You're literally not learning those things.
Their muscles wouldn't even develop properly. Have you ever tried to do like one of those, they're called slack lines, right? Where it's like you hook it up to some trees and then you basically do like a tightrope, but on a lower level, right? Even if you go to the gym and you think you've got like strong muscles, you try to balance on that thing, like immediately it just starts shaking because you don't have those specific muscles and those specific places to stabilize in that way, right? And so there are certain things that you have to develop on your own. And when you sit your child in front of a screen all day, there are so many things they're not developing. They're not even taking in the world around them. This is at the crucial years when they should be learning, like, oh, look at the leaves, look at the sky, the temperatures change, the lighting changes, all that. But they're not even seeing that. They're not even seeing like going from day to night. They're just seeing screen, flash, flash, flash. And it's like they're spending their whole life just doing that. And then on top of that, it's just like this child is not taking in the world around them. They said this as well. They said, we know that if a child is not looking at a person's face, when they look at a person's face, that's when their brain lights up and they're able to learn so much from just that. And that's really what they're saying. Like, that's when the brain, quote unquote, turns on, is by looking at somebody's face. And that's where they're learning the most. But these children are not doing that. And I'm like, hold on, they knew this. This is a study that they've been conducting since 2013.
Right.
They knew this already, and yet what happened in 2020, 2021, like everybody's wearing a mask, which is like, and obviously we saw the effects of that. And we were talking about this really early on, right? But obviously now they're coming out and they're saying like, oh yeah, oops, a bunch of children are delayed now. Like,
but during the whole pandemic, it was like, oh no, that's bullshit, or it's so fascinating how like you could call it the mainstream or scientists or whatever. It's everybody who's in any position of authority whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then anybody who adheres to that authority.
Yeah.
Would just bend, not based on principle. They would bend on sort of whatever the agenda is.
Yeah.
Whatever it's like, it's so weird because who's the actual authority? If you really look at it, you say, oh, it's the WHO. Okay, but where are they getting their guidance from? Like, where are they getting their decision to do something from? Because it can't just be the WHO. Yeah. It's so weird because it's like the authority that we perceive as external is so diffuse. You can't point to it. Oh, it's this thing. It's not obvious. If you think it's this, it's like, but then that'll be contradicted over here at a certain point. And so it's not always clear, like, okay, who's actually the one? But then everybody's kind of generally saying the same thing.
It's interesting because like, you tend to think of it of like, the image that I have in my mind is like, some old man in a suit in some like dark lit room. And he's telling them, like, he's telling whoever's running the WHO, he's telling them like, no, we're going to say everybody needs to, and they're like, yeah, yes, sir. Yeah.
But it's weird because you'll see like system will, contradict the WHO, let's say, or like the WHO will say something that's like, oh, we don't agree with that. And so you'll see these little contradictions everywhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you can't really point to this one. I mean, it's obvious to me that it's not a human authority. That's the authority. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's not, there isn't that person that you're talking about.
Right.
I'm not saying at certain levels there aren't.
Yeah.
Like at certain, like,
but when you say, hold on, because when you say it's not a human authority, it sounds like you're saying it's not coming from humans.
it's not,
Like, I know it's not coming from an individual, right? But like, it's not like it's coming from our digital screen is the authority, or like, or is that what you're saying?
um, yeah, I'm saying it's not just a specific group of individuals.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not saying it can't be,
Uh-huh.
but even if it is, there's still something beyond that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll say I got this book I've been reading. I finished the last book I was on. What was it? I don't remember what the book I just finished was.
Oh, hyper.
Oh, Hyperion, yeah, which was really good, by the way. I think you really like it. But then there's more in that. There's like it's like 3 or 4 books, but I haven't got those yet. So anyway, so I went on to this other book that I had for a while, I haven't read, by Greg Bear, called Blood Music,
Okay.
right? Which is just, even the title, I was like,
Yeah.
it sounds like kind of like something I wouldn't like just from the title, right?
Sounds like a thriller or something. Yeah.
And it kind of has that sort of side of it too, but it's actually, it's really funny. Hey, check this out. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna see if I can find the cover to the specific cover of the book that I have. Oh, here it is. Okay, let me share my oh, I can't. Here's the specific cover,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So even like the picture of it just looks kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I hadn't read it. Anyways, not that that really matters. But what was interesting is Max picks up the book, right? It was on my shelf, it was on my nightstand or whatever, and he starts looking at it, and he starts laughing. He's like, ACGGTAT. He's like, oh, that's DNA,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then he goes, UGO, that's RNA. Like, he knew the difference between whether it's a U or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
know,
hilarious. Yeah.
I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's why I'm gonna show the cover, but without spoiling anything, which you could read from the back of it, it's like this guy. He's a researcher at a lab where they're doing. Their lab's called Genetron, and they're working on something called biochips, which is like trying to combine silicon computing power with cellular processes in some way, where it's like, it's not like the Neuralink idea where it's like you have a computer chip in your brain. It's more like trying to combine silicon processing and organic processing some way. And so it's a biochip. It's like they don't really go into a lot of detail about what they're specifically trying to do, but it's kind of like it's like a new field that's being explored. And this company's trying to be like the first on the market with some kind of working biochip. Okay. But this guy's a researcher for them. And then he's also using the labs at night to do his own research because he sees that they're overlooking something. Okay. And he's like, instead of trying to utilize the silicon part, he's like, a cell already has a computer-like ability because it has DNA, and that's computer code. And he's like, if I can just basically utilize that, I can utilize the computing power of cells themselves. I don't need to I don't need to make a chip. I can just somehow. So he starts doing some process he uses his lymphocytes. He like takes them out and puts them in a dish or whatever.
Okay.
And he's basically figured out how to have them communicate and learn and rewrite themselves, because he's using the part of the DNA that's considered the junk DNA. So it doesn't write for like the normal protein. So it's like, he's like, look, there's all this empty stuff there,
Sure, yeah.
And so, and then he gets to the point where they're as smart as a planarian worm. Right. And then he gets to the point where they solve mazes and that they're as smart as, right.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to keep it all secret. And I don't want to spoil too much of it, but basically he has to leave the lab because they find out what he's doing, and it seems like they don't quite understand what he's doing, but he's like, I got to get out of here, and I don't want them to destroy my samples and stuff. So he injects himself with it.
Oh, geez.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the basic point is, then they start spreading throughout his body and getting smarter and smarter. And they're like communicating with each other and taking over his cells. And like, and it's like this intelligence inside of his body that's like not him anymore. It's like the cells themselves are this hyper intelligence using it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was relevant because when you're asking about the
Like,
is the authority a human intelligence, it's like I'm not saying there's some alien out there.
Yeah.
I'm saying it I agree with you, it is humans, but it's an intelligence within humans that's not directed by the humans themselves. It's you know.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so kind of going back to that point of like, so there's so much that I want to say here. Going back to the disease called leader, right? It's like, all right, this child never, they have a screen in front of them all day. They're never going to learn about the world around them, or they learn about it in a very delayed way. And they're not learning how to negotiate discomfort, really, or navigate discomfort, or being bored or anything like that. And they're constantly being fed something to entertain them, right? And so they're never going to learn to be creative, because everything that they will do to be creative. I saw this video of a baby who was like, they would ask him, you know, do you want to go do this? You want to go to grandma and grandpa's? And he'd go like this, and he'd be like this, and like, and like, we don't know why he does this. And then they put on a kids TV show where a grown man who's dressed like a colorful child or whatever, every time he's like, we're gonna do this, yeah, right? And so this like toddler, like looks like 18 months, right? Every time they're like, we're going to grandma and grandpa's, it's like, and like
yes, like that kind of expression.
like yes, but that's not coming from him, you know.
Right.
It's not his own creativity. I saw another one where it was like okay, it was a mom who was talking to her child in the UK, and I guess they watched some other kid show from the US, and the mom was like, my child has an American accent. It's like, say car, like say water, say zebra. What's this? What? Like, where'd you get this from?
You having a laugh, mate?
Right? But it was really funny, because it was funny to the extent like where did that come from? Obviously, the only influence was she's watching American television shows.
Okay, dude, I gotta show you this. Katie sent me this, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna talk about it or not, but it's so relevant now.
Yeah.
You'll love this one. Hold on. I don't know if she sent it. I think she just sent it to me.
She may have sent it to me.
Did you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so how long is it? Because I haven't watched it.
No, it's like 40 seconds.
Okay.
CBS.
Okay, what's this one?
Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
NFL Fox.
Let's see.
Monday night.
Monday Night Football, yeah.
Yeah, Monday Night Football.
All right. All right, this next one.
And NFL Network.
Yeah. What's that?
Prime Video.
Which one?
Prime Video.
Prime Video?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did they say?
Prime Video.
Baseball.
Okay. I saw that and I was like, that is fucking sad. Like, specifically when he said, it really hit me when he said NFL Fox. Now I was like, this child is straight up a consumer. Like, he is like,
What was the Prime Video thing?
Amazon Prime.
Oh, like it's what they play before a Amazon Prime Video. Okay.
But I think it's before Prime Video Sports.
Okay. I just didn't understand the context of Prime Video, but that makes sense.
Yeah. But like, I mean, I see that. I'm just like, okay, so he knows all the brand names. Like, that's what you're excited about. He knows all the brand names. That's what's filling up his brain, right? It's just like, I remember one time you made this post. and it was like you guys were looking at shoes for Max, right? And like one of them was Nike, and the other one I don't remember. But you're like, which brand should we choose? Who should be the overlord, the brand overlord for our child? And everyone's like, weighing in with like, oh, we love this shoe, love that shoe. But I just thought it was hilarious, right? But it really is like that, like where parents are like loyal to a brand, and then they get their children loyal to this brand. Not just Nike is a brand, but NFL is a brand. Like the fucking sports team that you watch, the Steelers or the Patriots or whatever, that's a brand. And people are like, yeah, but like that's our team, whatever. You're just beholden to a brand. You are you're worshiping a brand, literally. And they're so excited about this kid. And I saw in the top corner, it's USA Today. Of course, USA Today is going to be sharing that. Of course, it's like, yeah, see how cute it is? This child loves our brands, right? Don't you want your children to love our brands too?
And how do they create that? It's literally just impulsing people over and over and over and putting it everywhere. It's not through, hey, here's why this is the best.
Yeah.
It's just a literal psychological manipulation.
It's just like
That's
McDonald's.
literally it.
It's literally just like McDonald's. It reminds me so much of like McDonald's, their whole thing. They have the Happy Meal. They have the playpen. You know what the fuck I'm trying to say?
Pigpen.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks. But they have like all these things, and it's geared towards children. Why? Not because it's good for your child, but because they know if they can give your child all these good emotions and get them hooked on it as a child, they will be a customer for life.
Right.
It'll be so hard for them to say, no, I don't want McDonald's. Or when they're driving past the M, they don't go, oh, McDonald's. Like, it's so easy, especially if you're in a foreign place. You're just, you're familiar with McDonald's. You love McDonald's. You get all these good feelings from McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, right? McDonald's, I'm loving it. It's
CNN, Sports Center.
Right?
But actually, those things they were playing sound a lot like that.
Yeah.
It's like this, da-na-na, da-na-na, like da-da-da-da-da,
Yeah, and you saw him like humming along with it, like like he knows.
It was really interesting, man. Like watching his expression also, because you could see him like processing, like, okay, it was almost like he was a contestant on Jeopardy, like, okay, yes, okay, yeah, okay, I know that one,
Right?
like you, and okay, well, the most significant thing that stood out to me though was the part where it says his parents have no idea how he does this or how this happened or whatever.
Really? They have no idea.
I believe it, dude. I believe that they don't.
They have no
I know they
idea. I don't even know how he knows.
What does that tell you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what does that also, it creates this point, because that's probably some viral video. It creates a point where people are like, wow, genius. You're either born with it or you're not. And like, I mean, they don't know how he did it. I think people would see that as some kind of a genius.
Right.
Like this kid is like, how old was he? I didn't even notice it.
He was 3.
He said 3. He's 3 years old. And they'd be like, wow.
You got a smart kid. You got a really smart kid. Like,
but if we show you our 3-year-olds that can read at an advanced level, it's like, well, the parents were just smart.
Right.
If I had said, I don't know how they did it, people would be like, wow, they're just geniuses. It's like, you can't argue with this retarded intelligence here. That's like, oh no, it's not possible to actually create it, because the thing that supposedly is supposed to create intelligence, understanding, education, and so forth, our school system clearly does not do it in any systematic, consistent, replicatable way.
Right.
So in everyone's minds, there's this point where it's like, well, it's not possible to create it.
Right. Because
and yet they'll send their kids to school thinking it's going to educate my kid,
right,
knowing if I said, okay, so you're putting your kid in school because you want them to be a genius, right? How many parents would say yes to that? They'd probably be like, I'm sure they would just laugh at first. They'd be
right.
Like, no, I mean, I want them to get a good education. What does that mean?
Yes. Yes.
And you think school guarantees that?
Well, I chose a good school. It's a Catholic school,
It's so interesting because Katie had sent me this thing. It was like from some Russian, I don't know if she sent it to you. It was like some Russian academy thing where it's like they're having kids do Rubik's cubes, like their marketing videos. It's like all the kids solving Rubik's cubes and then them doing like math really fast. And it's like this weird thing where they're going like, I don't know what they're doing with their
Oh,
hands.
they do
And,
like
all
this.
yeah, they're doing something
Yeah,
with
yeah,
their
yeah.
hands, and then like they're doing math really quick, you know,
It's an abacus.
in their hands.
Yeah, it's like it's an imaginary abacus where they're like,
Got it.
like
Okay. Yeah,
moving
we
the
didn't know
beads
what they
over.
were doing.
Yeah.
But I was even hesitant to talk about it because I just know within people, it's like this point of like, oh, see, look, they got all these academies everywhere and all this stuff. It must work. And it's like, but when you really look at it, isn't it just creating more slaves?
Yeah.
How is it really creating a point where the child is self-directed, self-confident? It's just creating everybody like a cookie cutter, the same, but not even at the same. It's still, you're not going to get into that school and be a part of that if you didn't have the right vocabulary from a young age, because you won't be able to keep up.
Yes, that because there's like Avery sent that video of like all the elite schools that cost like hundreds of thousands a year, right? And even to get into those schools, you have to test into the school to begin with, right? So it's like, and plus, even if you do pass that test, you have the money. The school has the right, and they do this because I've talked to parents who have the money to do it. Their kid could technically get into that school, and they're like, no, we were denied. We didn't have a connection into the school.
Actually, that happened to me when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my best friend at the time when I was in middle school, we went to a public middle school, and I don't remember what the stimulus was, but it was like maybe his parents wanted him to go to this private school, or I'm not sure what it was, but one of us decided we were going to go to private school, and then our families talked, and it was like, yeah, let's send our kids to this private school, Straight Jesuit, which is like one of the top schools, at least in Texas, like private high schools.
Yeah.
And nationally ranked too, but regardless, what was I going to say about it? But what happened was you have to take an entrance test. Right. And my friend at the time, he scored, I don't remember exactly, but let's just say like 86% or whatever. Right. And I got like a 97% on like the entrance test. Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't get in and he did.
Oh, wow.
But on the application that you have to fill out, I put like I was an atheist. Right. And it was a Catholic school and he was Catholic. Right. So then, as far as I understand, like my grandmother, who was like my step grandmother, right? She was Catholic, and she like had money. She was a top real estate broker, and all this stuff. She like called her church and like called the head priest or whatever. It was like a big church in Houston, and she had like donated a bunch of money to build like a whole wing of the church or whatever. Right? She was like, she told them the situation. It was like the next week I got in.
Next week, you're Catholic.
Well, I don't know about that. I never had to do anything. I never had to say I was Catholic.
You already did your first communion, everything. You were just like, oh, no, he's been practicing Catholic.
But my point, the reason I thought of that story was because when you were saying it, I was like, yes, but if the family has enough pull, they'll still be able to go beyond that point. But they have, it's like a political thing, right?
Right.
So it's a total political thing.
Yes.
Yeah. It's fascinating, huh? But it really shows you like that's how politics works at a certain level, right? It's like, hey, you owe me this kind of, or whatever.
Yeah. So, okay. Man, because I wanted to bring up this point of, I was sharing what I was saying about like, screen time with kids and everything, and how kids parents will put their kids in school, and then they're not even concerned about like what's happening in the school. They just don't want a phone call from the school saying, hey, your kid's misbehaving or whatever. And like, they're medicating their kids because they don't sit down and all this stuff. Right. And somebody had brought up the point of like, parents are treating their kids like pets. Like, don't make me look bad. Sit here in this corner, watch this screen. Like, they'll take them to a restaurant, put the headphones on them, give them a tablet. Okay, sit there, be good. Right. And they're like not even communicating with the child, right? And so they treat their kids like pets. The kids, like you said, they don't develop that self-direction. They always want somebody to lead them. So then they become an adult, and it's like, can you do this for me? Why can't you do this like simple thing for yourself? But
even just the point of putting your kid in school at a young age in that environment where everyone's doing the same thing, creates that mentality of, and this isn't to say like everybody should do their own random thing and like it's all about being an individual, like, but there is a balance. Like there is a point where being an individual is important as human beings, and also being in a collective, being in a group is important, and considering that, but it should come from the individual.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you don't educate, because no matter what, you're going to influence a child. Right. So it doesn't mean you don't educate them, but it's more of a, it's like you can manipulate the environment so the child purely does it from a point of programming, or you can program them with an understanding so that it comes also from a, like, I am making this choice for myself because I see the choice that I have to make. And so it's like, are you going to just program your child to be this? Or are you going to program them with what is required to make choices? And that's the difference of how we look at it with our kids. We give them the vocabulary.
Yeah.
You can't, education is programming.
Yeah.
We have this negative, it's interesting because you look at school, it's just brainwashing. But then everybody has this negative idea about brainwashing. Yeah. Like, oh, I don't want my kids to be brainwashed. Like, no, there's no person on the planet that would say they want their kids to be brainwashed.
Right.
Right? Like left, right, doesn't matter. They're not going to be like, yes, I want my kids to be. No communist is going to say that they're brainwashed. No libertarian, no conservative, whatever. Like no one's going to be like, I'm brainwashed. They're going to say that other people are brainwashed.
Right.
But education unavoidably is a form of brainwashing.
Yeah.
If you look at what brainwashing means in the sense of,
well, not in the sense of like washing lesions off the brain.
Sure. I mean,
that's where it came from, remember?
Right. But what I mean is in the sense that people think of it as, it's like they think of it as, they think of brainwashing as, it's almost like you know everything, you know the truth about everything. You're totally innocent and you're just walking along and somebody comes along and puts all these wrong things in your mind just so they can control you to do things for them so you can be their slave. That's essentially what people imagine brainwashing is.
Right.
And if you look at it objectively, based on what I just described, isn't that what is going on when you put your kids in school and you put them in front of the TV and all this stuff? Here's this child. I wouldn't say they know everything, obviously, at the stage of they're basically brand new, but they're innocent. And then you fill them up with all this wrong specific stuff that doesn't have to be that, right? Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, it's really easy with history, I think, because you could have different historical perspectives on something without even having to get controversial, right?
Yeah.
Like people still don't agree on what was the cause of Civil War.
Oh yeah, okay.
The American Civil War, right? So people say, "Oh, it's just all about wanting to keep your slaves," and some people are like, "Well, no, it really wasn't about that. Like, it was about some other shit, right?"
Yeah.
So you could teach your child this, or you could teach them that's that. And one thing you're teaching them, if you're teaching them it's one thing, you're not teaching them it's this. So they're gonna believe it's this or know that it's this versus this,
right?
And that's brainwashing.
Yeah.
And why are you doing that? Because you want them to think and feel a certain way about something. You say, well, it's the truth, but you don't know the truth. Like, how many people who have this idea that the Civil War was about slavery, let's just say, have actually studied all the historical documents?
No.
Like, read all the autobiographies and the letters and all that shit. There's like virtually zero people.
It's like,
and even most of the historians have just read the books that the other historians wrote.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's literally just a feeling for most people. Like, it's a feeling that you have. Like, I was told it was about slavery. Of course it's about slavery. There were slaves before and now they're not slaves after. So clearly it was about slavery.
Now go to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
We ended slavery. It's like, what's really funny is I was trying to think, was it about the Richmond, north of Richmond thing? Hold on. What was it about? There was something I was looking at the other day. It was about Black people being oppressed. It was no. It was Bill Maher has a podcast sort of thing.
Okay.
called Random Club, the Random Club or something. And I think I'm getting recommended it because I watched the one with him and Riley Gaines, that swimmer who didn't go along with the whole trans Leah Thomas thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, so there was a clip I saw with him talking to John Mellencamp, who's like a singer, musician, like some famous. I never listened to that stuff, but I think John Mellencamp. I think of like, I don't know, Neil Young, John Denver. It just has like the same connotation in my mind. So I don't know what kind of music, but some kind of like stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Here, I'll look it up. I know he's probably got like really famous music.
I never listened to Neil Young either. I'm just I tried to listen to some Neil Young the other day and I was like, I'm not into this. I'm not. John Mellencamp. What do you do?
Small Town.
Oh,
I think I know that song. That's like a really.
That's the Try This.
I was born in a small town.
Oh, okay.
I think it's that song.
Okay.
I could just be making up a whole melody, assuming it's that.
And I'm just going along with it because I'm like, I don't know any better. Yeah, all right, cool. That
Jack
sounds
and
like,
Diane. Oh, that's the one I was thinking of actually. But I think he also sings the one I was saying.
I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, you know the Jack and Diane one?
No.
You do, dude. You've heard it. Hold on. Two American kids growing up in the heartland.
Oh, okay.
You know
Actually,
that?
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, everyone knows that song because it's brainwashed into us.
Yeah.
Jesus, man. There's so much music that I had. I'm not saying this is one of those, but there was a lot of music I had to relearn, if that makes sense. Like I fucking hated the Beatles growing up because it was just like so much slammed down everyone's throats, right? And then it wasn't until later where I was like listening to it, going like, wow, that's actually pretty cool, you know?
Yeah.
Or like even just rock music itself. It wasn't until I started listening to Frank Zappa where I was like, oh, dude, I like rock music. But it wasn't just any rock, you know, it's like a type of rock. But anyway, so just my point just being like how it's so like forced on everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and you would always hear these things like when I was on swim team at swim meets, they'd play like certain songs and it's like on the radio and everywhere. I'm just like, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so John Mellencamp was on Bill Maher's podcast and he says they were just having some conversation. He goes, well, you know, because he was saying he had written a song that was unreleased. And there was like a lyric in it about from the cotton fields to the playing fields.
Okay.
And Bill Maher was like, well, yeah, he's like, I'm sure, you know, being paid millions of dollars and, you know, playing on a, you know, sports team, all that stuff is a little better than picking cotton in the fields, you know, because it's like, I get it. It's like, oh, you've got an owner, like you have to, because his point was like, they just entertain all the white people.
Got it.
It was that whole idea of like,
This
got the black, not to consider that there's white people playing also.
Right. But no, there's definitely, there's a whole dynamic there where it's like, okay, you're in the NFL, which like, there's a joke. There's a joke. And I don't remember who says it. Maybe it's Cat Williams. Maybe it's Cat Williams' joke. But it's NFL stands for Negro fucking large. Like
as if that's like their description. That's not even a good acronym.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
But anyway, it's like, because, okay, you know.
So is Tom Brady also a slave like the black guys in the NFL?
No, he's an overseer. He's an overseer, right? That's why he's the captain of the team. He's the quarterback.
What about what was that guy McNabb, black quarterback for I forget
Donovan McNabb for Eagles. Yeah.
He was like a big time guy, right?
Yeah, he was.
I still probably plays. I don't know, but
I don't know. I don't.
My point, like being like there was a quarterback. Was he the captain? I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, sure.
They wouldn't let him have that much power.
But yeah, no. There's definitely it was like a meme or a joke that was like spread to mainstream, and this was like, you know, prior to the internet being used so heavily the way, like when people still watch TV and they would watch specials, you know, and so if you wanted to watch a comedian, there's only so many comedians you're going to watch, especially if you're black. And then this was one of those jokes that was just like, yeah, he's right. He's got a point, you know, and once you have that, it just spreads throughout the community, you know? And yeah, so there's definitely this thing, I would say.
It's just such a low intelligence like take on it. Like, oh, it's the blacks are entertaining the whites. And it's like, so black people don't watch football or basketball or any of that stuff. And it's and there's no white people playing in those teams. And it's like,
as if you didn't just watch that video of a 3-year-old.
I know.
Don't know how.
But it's like it's like assuming the person's just going to go based on that one emotional point of like, yeah, they are like slaves and like just are entertained and like overlook everything. And it was to Bill Maher's credit, he was like, come on, man, like what are you talking about? And he goes, well, so he tried to get past it, and he was like, well, you know, I mean, you have to say like probably like maybe 1% of black people have a better life since the time of slavery. And Bill Maher was like, you think it's 1%? And he goes, I don't know, 10%. He's like, I'm just pulling a number out of my ass. And Bill Maher goes, well, yeah, you are, because that's where it belongs. That's where your opinion belongs.
That's a good comeback.
It was a pretty good one. Yeah. But why did I bring that up? What were we talking about before?
You said something about music. John Mellencamp. Right. And, I don't remember what we were talking about before.
Oh man, what was the point about? There was a specific point about the slavery, or I guess because we were talking about people aren't slaves anymore.
Civil
maybe
War, yeah, is what you were talking about. But basically, you can have a difference of opinion in brainwashing. That's where we were with all of it.
Yeah. Why? I feel like there was some. Maybe it was just because I thought it was a funny story, but but yeah, it's like. I guess it's like that's the slavery that people like. They would actually go, yeah, that's slavery,
right?
At some level, but then public school, not slavery, no,
right?
Or
right.
And even if you look at it, okay, so what is the points where they're saying you're a slave if you're in the NFL? It's like because you have an owner, because you have to work grueling hours and all this stuff and perform. It's like, how is that different than being like a vice president of like a big major company or any company for that matter? Like,
working a job,
right? It's so the idea that we like got past slavery, but they're like, no, we haven't because the NFL. I'm like, oh, that's the modern day slavery. Yeah, right. Okay,
that's it. Yeah, but I mean, okay, so people can't even think for themselves. Obviously. Oh, that was the other point that I wanted to say. It was like, you started bringing up this point of like, you know, the answer is not everybody just do their own thing randomly and like, because, we don't want to all listen to what's going on at school or all.
It's like a reaction to being controlled.
Right. But it's like, okay, you're not able to think creatively or think on your own, direct yourself. And I was thinking of, I'd listened to an audio recently. There's a Bernard audio where he's talking about, actually, that's what it was. It was talking about consciousness, the future of consciousness is what I was listening to. And is talking about how you're listening to, like you'll have a reaction to something and you don't know, or you basically act out a program. That's basically what it comes down to, right? But you have not established for yourself how to be able to predict that program or to predict your own mind. And so you are just basically at the behest of your own mind. Because, okay, it's the more and more, I see it more and more clearly. And it's just this point of, we have this mind, that's it. What I'm starting to realize is just how beautiful the mind is, actually. In the sense that it is a very amazing machine, you know, in that it will just call up a memory for you, or it will, you go to think about something and it's able to put all this together in a seemingly coherent fashion where it's like you can have all these streaming thoughts. You can think of all these things, and generally speaking, you don't have a hiccup in your mind. You're asking your mind to do so much for you all the time, and just, you know, like you're not taking any responsibility yourself. It just automatically does all these things for you on your behalf, right? And if we would learn how the mind is actually structured, how we've built our mind to this point, why this leads to this, or why we have this reaction. Oh, because it's coming from here, which comes from there, which if we would actually learn all that, we could use our minds to be very effective for us on our behalf. Right. And so it's really easy, like you see those memes of like people sitting in bed and they're complaining about like, I had a great day, and just before I try to go to sleep, you remember that one embarrassing moment? And it's like, it keeps them up at night. And like, I see that all the time as like a comic or a meme, or, you know, people say that all the time. Someone did another post the other day, and it was like, obviously their market, there was some Chinese guy, it's hilarious. I don't know how I got recommended this. There's some Chinese guy, and he's teaching English, and he's teaching English to Chinese speakers. And he's like, okay, say this English phrase he's saying to the student. And the student's like, what are you going to do about it? And he's like, no, say it like this. What are you going to do about it? Said, oh, you sound like Justin Bieber. And he's like, okay, so you have to break down this word. How you say this? She said, going to. No, you sound like a beach. Gonna. In English, you say Ghana. And she's like,
yeah.
But why? And he said, because English lazy. Oh, okay, yeah. Right. It's so funny because one of the things that he did was like, when you're talking to someone at the restaurant, and they're like, enjoy your food. Oh, you too. And oh no, I say you too, right? Like how we'll hate on ourselves or be embarrassed by why your mind just recalls this incident all the time, right? And so people make all those jokes about, you know, why does my mind do this? My mind's so stupid. Oh, I'm so dumb, whatever. It's like, no, if you would just actually understand your mind, study your mind, and learn, you could change it. You're not a quote unquote terrible person, right? Maybe you are, I don't know. Maybe you realize all this, you understand this, and you still are just like, no, I'm not going to do it, right? But that would be a decision that you're making, and that'd be a really stupid decision. But if you actually knew that you could change your mind or get your mind to work for you on your side and make you even more effective, it would just take some work on your part. Why wouldn't you want to do that? You know, where you could live like, you know, I look at, it's really easy to look at Max or Aria or any of the TT kids who started like really young. It's really easy to look at them and just go, holy crap. You know, if I was doing that as a kid, where would I be now? You know, if I was able to understand the things that they're understanding, like what you just said with the ACGGT, you know, all that stuff. As a kid, at 6 years old, I would not know that's DNA. I would not know that's RNA. I would not know. He's 6 years old.
Right.
You know?
There was no symbols to indicate what it was. It was just letters, strings of letters, and he could see very clearly what it was.
I would just think that's a random string of letters, honestly, you know, and it would probably be not until high school at the very earliest where I would even consider that that's DNA, you know? And I'm just saying, it's so interesting.
You know, and if you look at it with Max, the reason he knows that is because he's watched a lot of videos and stuff on DNA. Like that's what he's been watching lately is like chemistry, biology, DNA, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's, so that point about screen time, that's what we use the screen time for.
Right.
it's not like just random video games. Like they don't play Minecraft and like all these things like that. Like if we
Yeah.
play some video game, and actually, remember we talked about Space Kim? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
remember if it was probably not. I don't know if it was on this podcast or somewhere, but the kids haven't played that in like probably since the last time I talked about it.
right. Yeah.
So it's like they don't get like, oh, they're just gonna go and keep playing that game, and then like they haven't been playing any games probably since that time. Like now they're like watching chess videos. The things they're doing right now is chess, chemistry, biology. It's pretty much that right now.
Man, that's so interesting because you can kind of look at it like that's just put an image in my mind of your kids have this, and I see this a lot actually. It's like your kids have a foundation that they're building, right? And like there's a foundation for electronics, and they'll start building on that. And then they're not touching electronics for a while, and then now they're building a foundation for
They still will, but it's not as like the same level of focus.
right.
And I just don't talk about it. But yeah, like so there's still like electronics strewn about this, like in the room I'm in,
Yeah,
in the house, they're doing stuff, right? But yeah, it's not like they'll get focused on something.
right.
They'll still be doing the other stuff in the periphery, but it's not like the focus point. So
Right. But I kind of see it kind of like building a city. It's like, oh, this building's getting built up a little bit. And it's like over time, when you watch like a time lapse of different images from different time eras of a city, it'll be like, oh, there were huts. It was a village. Then there started to be some buildings, and then like some skyscrapers.
Or look at how you build a house.
Yeah.
You put the foundation, you put the plumbing, you put the walls, you put the electric wiring, you put the roof, all that stuff.
Yeah,
and then at the last minute, it all comes together into something that it wasn't before.
right.
That until like that final touch, it was like not going to work.
Yeah.
And you have to hook it up. So it's like all these little, like you're saying, foundational points.
Yeah.
Right. That imagine when Max is 10 and he's got all of that at his disposal. And it's funny with Seneca. Also, I'll come back to that. Did you notice like with Caius, because we were talking before we started recording everything when he was here, like how focused he was on you and everything?
Yeah.
It wasn't just like a, like that kind of a thing, right? He's a 1.5. And even like when I was like, okay, we're going to start recording. So let you go with Katie, right? He was kind of like, didn't want to go. You could see in his expression, like, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
But we talked to him about it, and then he didn't throw a tantrum or anything.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And just how like stable he is. And also like, for example, my phone, let's say I left my phone on the counter and he reached it and he got it. He might take it and like look at it for a moment, because it's like got a screen, right?
Yeah.
And then, but if I go over and I say, hey, Caius, can I have my phone? He'll be like, just give it to me. Because he's not like playing on this thing all day.
Right.
He's not really playing on it at all, right?
Yeah.
But he's not, he doesn't have that same point like a kid would be like if you take the tablet or whatever, where they're like, So, because we're really specific about that. And what I was going to say about Seneca, they've been doing a lot of chess stuff lately, watching videos, tutorials, all kinds of stuff. We build in the vocabulary, so they know all the pieces, all that stuff, right? And Seneca was the other day, she kept saying, because I'm not studying what they're studying, she's going, PP on the PP, PP on the PP. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then we have this little like dry erase board we have on the fridge. And she even wrote that on the thing, PP, like the letters P on the PP. She wrote that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she goes, put pressure on the pinned piece. So that's like what they're talking about, and then like I put this video up on like the parenting group where the kids wanted to play chess. Seneca wanted to play with me. So Max is just sitting watching. And so we're playing and I put her in check. And then I was like, okay, check. And she's like, okay, I have to do CPR. And I was like, what do you mean CPR? Because I don't know like what they're talking about. And she goes, well, I can either capture, protect, or run away. Right. And I'm like, okay. So then I helped her reason out like which of those options made sense. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just really cool, like that they're absorbing all of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was talking with Max because he went with me to do some errands yesterday, and we were in the car. He couldn't really see it, but I was just playing like some videos of Magnus Carlsen, like talking about chess and then him playing and stuff. And then I was actually watching. We were listening to a Lex Friedman interview of. It was like, who was it? I forget who he was talking to, but they were talking about Magnus Carlsen, and so they were talking about why he's so great and everything. And the guy was saying how, he's like, I don't know. It's like he knows. Oh, because they were talking about how the way he'll play, he won't let the other person just go into like a historic or like technical game.
Okay.
He'll make it so like by like move 8 or what, like you're in new territory kind of a thing, right? They were just making this comment. And the guy was saying, but it's like in that situation, he's like, Magnus Carlsen has understood so much and seen so many games and studied so much that he just has so much more that he can remember. Right. And I was pointing that out to Max, and I was like, see why people think this guy is a genius.
Yeah.
Because he can remember stuff that he studied or read. So you have to do the studying. It's hard work. Like, it's not just like he just was born a chess genius. Like, he wouldn't be where he's at if he hadn't studied and thought about it and everything. And I was saying to Max, I'm like, do you see why people say that you're a genius? Like when they talk to you or they see you do something that you think is just so easy.
Yeah.
It's simply because at the level what they're looking at, you can remember stuff that you read. Like when you're talking about the periodic table, and like the other day, I forget what it was. It was like zirconium, or I don't even know what it was. And I said some element, we were talking about something. He goes, oh, like, you mean 86 or whatever the number was. And I looked at the periodic table and he was right. And I'm like, how did you know? And it may not be zirconium. I'm just making that up. I don't remember what it was.
Right.
But I'm like, it's not, but again, it's like, how did you know that? It's like that video we watched with that kid. How did his parents don't know how he did it. It's like, well, he has the vocabulary.
Yeah.
He studied it and he can remember it.
You
so with this kid in that video, the studying was his parents fucking listening to that stuff all the time. That's obviously what's going on. Can that kid read?
No,
probably not.
Definitely not.
So why is the parent, that's the environment they're creating. And there's a sense of specialness about it, which is like, it's a totally fucking irrelevant thing in the world that we live in. What if that emphasis was placed on reading?
Right.
Right. And and the whole point about what we're doing is that we have the systematic way of doing it. So it's not just like, because those parents, I'm sure, don't read much.
Right. So, okay. It's interesting because, when you were describing the chess, what that made me think of is like, he doesn't allow them to go into like an historical game, which is sort of like in war, like all the generals would have studied all the different positions of past generals, past battles, etc. And that's what makes them really good is like, oh, if I'm Napoleon doing this,
it's what makes them technically, well, I was just going to say it makes them technically good.
Yeah.
But the one that gets to the level what they call genius is the one that takes all that historical stuff and can do something new.
Yeah.
With it. So it's like you've extracted the fundamentals out of that stuff. You're not just copying the pattern.
Right.
So what school does is it teaches you the patterns.
Yeah.
And to copy the pattern and repeat the pattern. So that's what it's for 12 fucking years or more of your life. That's what you're repeating. So that's why when it comes down to some big thing, like doctors can't be flexible because they're like, well, this is what I was told.
Yeah.
And you have a whole structure of reinforcement of like, just do what you were told. Don't go outside of that. Right. And there's a whole system behind that.
Right.
Versus the person who can take everything they've studied and go, okay, here's a new situation. I can solve the problem. Right. Yeah. And that's what I see like with our kids is that ability to, like that example I gave when Katie was trying to fix one of the kids' electric ATVs.
Yeah.
And they had this, it's like one of them is like a UTV style side by side where it's like got 2 seats, kind of like a car. And so that one, you have a steering wheel and you have a accelerator pedal and a brake, just like a car. Yeah. Right. Versus the electric ATVs, they have a throttle like a regular ATV and you steer it like this, right? So one of them we have is like more like a car. And so couldn't get it working. It just wouldn't do anything. And so there was one point where Katie had taken the pedal out because she had been looking up online of like what are possible things that could, so they were testing different points. So he took the pedal out because maybe like when you depress the pedal, it's not sending a signal or something.
Right.
And we had this multimeter that didn't it didn't make, so like there's multimeters that it makes a continuous sound and it'll either play the sound or not depending if there's current flowing through. So it'll give you that indication. Versus the one we had, it was like a cheaper one that didn't do that. So you had to just see if it gives you a reading or not, like on the display. It doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
And the ones that make a sound are better because the reading might be so low, it may not pick it up, but the sound will play, for example, right? Or it's just easier just to go really quick and you can hear the sound or not. Instead of having to sit there and look for the reading, you know what I mean? You could just hear beep, beep or not. So anyways, she didn't know, it wasn't even she didn't know how, it was just, it wasn't effective using that particular multimeter.
It wasn't clear.
Yeah, it was just like, is it working or not? It wasn't obvious, right? So Max saw the problem and because she had looked it up and she's like, well, we don't have one that makes the buzzing sound. So I don't know what we can do about this. Is it working? And Max saw the problem and he was like, I'll make a circuit. So he went in, got all his stuff, comes out, has a breadboard with like a power supply on it and has some wires and stuff. And then he takes like the wire from the pedal that has like that you would plug into wherever it goes into the system in the car. And he plugs like lead wires into it that hook to his breadboard. And he's got like a resistor and a little LED. And then they press the pedal and then like the LED turns on. And he's like, so it's obviously working. It's letting current through because otherwise the LED wouldn't turn on.
Yeah.
So he solved the problem in a really simple way. It wasn't like he created some extremely complex circuit,
Right.
but he took a very simple concept that I wouldn't even thought to do.
Yeah.
And was able to have that knowledge so clear within him that when a point came up, he saw how to solve it. And then there was another switch that we had to test. It was the
You know what else is really cool about that is like you said, that's not coming necessarily from experience in the sense of like, you'd expect an adult to do that because maybe an adult who's had a lot of experience, they're like, oh,
they've tested a lot of switches.
Yeah. I know how to do this. I've seen this before, that sort of thing. But like, that was just an idea that he had based on, he's had the experience of working with circuits.
Well, he understands what a switch is.
Yes.
He understood the type of switch that it was, because what I was going to say is there's another switch we had to test, which you flip it one way or the other. And it's not an off on. It's either you flip the switch to put the ATV in forward, or you flip it this way to put it in reverse.
Okay.
So whichever way it's continuously on, but in a different orientation. So it reverses it.
Yeah.
And when you look at the pins on it, it's got like 3 on one side and 3 on the other side of the thing. And so that's not going to work the same way as the other switch where it was just like 2 leads.
Yeah.
Like a black and a red or whatever.
Yeah.
But Max looked at it and he was like, yeah. And he explained like what it was and could figure out how to like hook it up and why. Because Katie was like, well, why don't you just make that same LED thing to test this? And he's like, it won't work that way. He's like, it's a different, and I forget the name of it, the kind of switch it was. He was like, it's not going to work because it's a different structure. So he could see the structure of it and understand it from the different application and just looking at everything. And he could see like why one solution would work and one wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right. And then by the time we finally got to testing it, we had bought the multimeter with the buzzing. And then we figured out how to hook that up and get it to do it and everything. And it worked. We figured it out. Right. But it was just really cool because, it's like he's able to solve. And it's not that I'm saying that is such a amazing result. It's not like he invented a rocket ship that went to the moon, which, somebody would be like, wow, that would be cool. And it's like, but 99.9% of adults couldn't do that simple point about the LED. Like if I gave you a breadboard, a power supply, an LED, and a resistor, would you be able to like just power it on the average person? No. Even like a mathematician or somebody who's like a genius at one other thing wouldn't know that. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that, and it's like, it's not because Max was born inherently a genius.
Right.
Why is it that he's so good at electronics? Because that's what we initially exposed him to.
Yeah.
And now he's learning about DNA. oh wow, is he so smart at DNA? He was just born knowing about that. Like, no, can process information and retain it and understand it and apply it, so forth. So like in that situation where you had some random ATGTAT, which it's obvious to me that that was DNA.
Mhm.
But when I looked at the book, it never was like a recognition of that's DNA.
Yeah.
Even though the book is clearly about genetic engineering and stuff like that, it never was a recognition in my mind of, oh, it's the DNA stuff.
Right.
Like he saw it and recognized it and made the connection when I didn't even make the connection. Even though I have the vocabulary of, if you ask me what is that, I'd be like, oh, it's a DNA code. It just never even clicked. You know, have you ever noticed that when you look at the cover of a book, especially like sci-fi, and you're like, oh, it's just a really cool picture or whatever. But then you read the book and you're like, oh shit, like it's actually, it's not always like that, but a lot of times it's like, oh, this is actually relevant to the actual, like Otherland is like that, right? Where you're looking and you're like, oh, I get what the picture is saying. Right?
Even like as you're going through the chapters, it'll have like a headline, and it's like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. You know,
actually, in that Blood Music book, the different parts, because there'll be chapters, but there's like parts of the book that have multiple chapters. Like the first one's interphase.
Okay.
And then it's like, I don't know what's the next one, metaphase, prophase, whatever it is, right? And Max was flipping through it and he was like, oh, he like knew these were like the different parts of the cell division or whatever, right? Yeah, it's really cool.
Man, look at that. Like, see, that is what I would call like a next level of appreciation. I described this before. I don't know if it was on the podcast that I described this, but like, it's sort of like when you listen to music, if you played an instrument, you know, and you listen to music, when you're listening to music, you're able to appreciate it differently. You know, you're able to appreciate it more. If you know, like, for instance, if you know 4/4 time and 5/4 time and, you know, all of that, like you can hear those different transitions within music and you can appreciate it because you're like, that is difficult to pull off, you know, like to just smoothly transition from 4/4 to 5, like, wow, this is good. You know, you can appreciate it so differently. And it's really that way when it comes to the more that you understand about anything.
Dude, that's how I started listening to jazz.
Yeah.
It's exactly that point. Like I watched a video of it was like, I think it was like some Vox, I don't remember what it was, Vox or something, where they were talking about like giant steps.
Oh yeah.
Remember we talked about this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like talking
Like,
about why it's such a big thing, and I never even heard of it before because that's how little I knew about jazz.
Wow.
Somebody like, well, you don't know giant steps, right? But I didn't know anything because I didn't ever listen to jazz.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard some things here and there, but it's not like it was always one of those things where it's just like, I mean, it might as well be country music. I just don't listen to that kind of music. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I remember listening to that video and them explaining it. And I was like, wow, now I can understand. Like a similar thing, I watched a video about Jay Dilla.
Yeah.
It's like about how he used the MPC and all that. And I was like, oh, wow. Like you didn't know like you listen to like a track and you don't really know what goes into it.
Right.
I remember there's that song Firestarter by The Prodigy, right? You've probably heard it, but it's like an older song from the 90s or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a techno-y kind of song, but it was like huge, like popular song when it was out or whatever. And there was this video I saw a while back of this guy recreating the song from scratch with these samples that, you know, it's like you look at like sampling like DJs and like a Jay Dilla type thing, like a producer. Yeah. This guy is like, you listen to the genre of the music, it sounds more like, it's like, here, look it up. I mean, you don't have to play it on here because it might flag it, but just listen to it for a second real quick on your side.
Okay.
Anybody listening?
Firestarter?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll recognize it instantly, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah.
And just skip forward a little bit.
Weird music video too.
Yeah, just skip forward to like, just hear like the kind of general.
It's got the drum and bass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So my point is, it's not like a hip hop where you're like, okay, it's obviously like a Kanye West style. You take a sample, you chop it up, you do this, you put beats. But when I watched the video of a guy showing how the guy, it was like this British dude, white dude, like the guy, like they have like crazy hair and shit. It's like they're more like goth techno industrial style.
Yeah,
Nothing to do with
yeah.
like, so you wouldn't think it was that same kind of music, but the way they put it together, he takes a sample. It was like some old school fucking like R&B sample or something. Like trying to think of what the sample was. There was a few of them.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually it wasn't that song. That's just one of their popular songs. It was actually the song Smack My Bitch Up.
Oh, I know that song.
It's the same group. So that
Yeah.
group does that song too.
Okay.
But when you listen to that song, and then the guy showed the original samples, it was like some fucking R&B thing, you know, that he took here and some other thing, and they stretched this and changed the tempo, and then they showed like how he created his own software synthesizer from scratch. Like, I mean, the guy may have done it with hardware in the past or whatever, but
yeah,
created his own patch out of the synthesizer sounds. He did just like use a pre-recorded thing and put like the delays and this and that and like put it all together, right? And I was like, even though I don't listen to that kind of music, it was like a whole new level of appreciation for that artist of like, oh fuck, this dude like created the song. He didn't just
yeah.
it's just some musicians playing some music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like overemphasize how great that stuff is. It's just the point of your point about when you have the vocabulary and then you can see, you know, it's like that time. I remember one of the first experience I had like that was when I was in college and I had to take like an art history class, and I lived in Houston, and literally within walking distance of my school was like multiple famous art museums.
Yeah.
So the teacher took us to this collection, the Manil collection, which has like the largest surrealist collection in like the world, I think. And she like just took us through and like started explaining the paintings, right? And I had no interest in that before.
Yeah.
But then she started explaining, I'm like, oh fuck, like that's cool. Like you start to understand more of what it was about, because at first glance you look at it and you're like, okay. And I think there's even a level to where some pop music can have that level, even that's popular mainstream stuff can have that level of within it, you know?
Yeah.
It's just so often, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's just used in a way where it's so, like you can have a really effective producer, but like, then they'll make it about some bullshit that's just like drinks in the club or, you know, some bullshit where you're
yeah. You know what it's like? Okay. All right. Most people are walking around and they're seeing everything in grayscale. That's what it's like, you know? And then you get like, you expand your vocabulary and then it's like you can see colors for the first time. You're like, this is insane.
You know, and I think that's probably why, and it's not just you, but I know you appreciate like what we're doing with the kids. I mean, I know you appreciate it, but I'm saying I know why is because you can see what goes into it.
Yeah.
So it's not like this, oh wow, that's just some genius thing that happened. It's like you could see, it's like when you learn to cook.
Yeah.
And then you're like start to see like what actually goes into something. You know what I mean? Start to appreciate it at another level.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, you know,
I wonder if people's definition of appreciate is fucked up.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I think they think appreciate only means like being grateful for something. I think a lot of people probably think that. They don't realize what it means.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. It's like you don't appreciate it. You don't understand what it actually is and what it takes and requires. It's not about a feeling.
It's like,
it's not a feeling only.
Right.
It could be a feeling, but
you can't appreciate it if you're ignorant to it. You know, like they're at odds. You know, you can't be ignorant of something and appreciate it at the same time, right? Or not know of something and appreciate it at the same time. It's like you will appreciate it more when you know, because you understand it. It's like those are the points of appreciation. So, like, okay, to your point of being able to appreciate the kids, like, yeah, I think a bit of that is, you know, I kind of grew up in that environment and understood like, hey, this is what's normal and that's not normal, you know, like, because I don't know how parents kind of perceive it for themselves as far as is what my kid's doing normal or whatever. And like, but they're not seeing hundreds or thousands of kids, you know, and comparing each of these different individuals and going, oh, this is what's normal. That, you know, they're not seeing that, right? Where I had,
even then, normal.
normal doesn't necessarily mean good. It's
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is just like, I definitely had that base point to go, when I saw Max, that's not normal.
Because working in childcare, being around it, like you saw
Right.
lots of kids. Yeah.
Right. And so I could already appreciate that. Right. And then on top of that, just knowing from expanding my own vocabulary and having walked the process myself, and then knowing exactly what goes into developing a child like that, it was just like, holy shit. Like that really lit me up because I could see the possibility within that. It's just like, okay. I remember reading that book, Nature via Nurture, right? And this was one of the second book that I started reading after I'd used TT for a while. And I remember reading it and just going like, oh, this is so cool. Because then I could understand the implications of what was being written. And it was just like, I was putting things together in a way that I'd never done before reading nonfiction. It was just like, oh, wow. Like what this means is this. And now I see why the author said this over here and how this all connects. It's just like, this is amazing. And I remember I was going to people just like, this is so cool. Do you understand what this means? And they're looking at me, looking at the book and just going, I can see you're really into that book. Like they didn't get it, you know? And I'm just like, how do I describe it? Like they were looking at me like, you fucking nerd. And I'm like,
Isn't that kind of like a frustrating point then when you are able to understand stuff and you want to share it and then people are just like, they can't do that.
it is frustrating.
You know? And so
It is.
that's why it's like, we're always coming back to this point of equalizing education for everybody, because then everybody would have that appreciation of like understanding things when you read them and connecting it. And, you know, as you were saying that, I was looking at the point of that whole brainwashing you were talking about earlier. It's like, we're brainwashing kids with the wrong shit.
Yeah.
And when I say brainwashing, I'm using that term very loosely, obviously, not in a negative connotation, in the connotation of you like, okay, if you're listening, can you consider that if you do not brainwash a child with the alphabet, they won't know the alphabet?
Right.
And somebody may not be able to consider that because they're still reacting to the word brainwash, but it's like, if you only think brainwash means negative, okay, then what word do you want to use? You say, oh, teach them. But that's not what you mean by brainwashing. You really mean it's like you're forcing the information in. And what I'm saying is if you just teach them the alphabet, they won't necessarily learn it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who can't read. So it's got to be a deeper level than just teaching it to them. Teaching is like explaining it. What the fuck do you need to explain about the alphabet? There can be some things that it can be helpful if you explain it.
Yeah.
But in itself, explaining it isn't going to get the child, like, perfect case in point. How did that child learn those fucking da 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 da?
Yeah.
No one explained it. No one was like, okay, when it goes da da da, okay, that's a AGA, or I don't know what the fuck it is, you know, like it's this progression. Okay. When they do that, that's this one. Okay. So no, it was being imprinted, literally brainwashed into him for him to then go, that's this. Like the moment he heard it, because afterwards, I'm sure they go, Fox, CNN, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like NFL, Fox, or whatever. So he's making that connection. You've got the one thing being impulsed with the other thing. Yeah. And what I'm saying is do that with the alphabet, do that with words. Dude, it's cool because obviously we do the podcast not so much as a marketing, you know, to get it out there, because it's like to do that, it's like we would have to stay such on the surface of so much, you know, and that's a whole other.
So confined. we already don't go all the way. We'd have to be way more confined.
Yeah, and I don't want to use that as an excuse, but it's just like, you know, our approach is like, okay, the responsibility is on those in the group to go out and talk to people and share with them, because there's no way the average person, like if the person had a choice between watching this or watching Oh, what was
Netflix.
that one that's being impulsed right now? There's a podcast called I don't remember what it's called. I think I sent it to you, or maybe I didn't. It was that one with Drake and that girl Bobby something. Did I send that to you?
No.
I don't know if I sent it to you. There's this girl named Bobby Altoff, I think is her name. And I'd never heard of her before. I guess she's like a comedian. I don't know how popular she is or whatever. But she has a podcast. And it's kind of like I've only seen part of one of them, but it's like just like it's very much playing on the idea of like awkwardness and just randomly talking about stuff and not there's no really a point to it as far as I can tell. It's not really like you're interviewing somebody. You can
Yeah.
look it up later, but it's called like I can't remember what. It's called dang, I should just look it up. It's called like the best podcast. Bobby Althoff. What is she from? I guess she's probably just like some kind of comedian
It's a
influencer.
really good
YouTuber.
podcast.
She's a podcaster, TikToker, right? Yeah. But she did like a podcast where it's kind of like an interview with Drake. I think that was her first one. And it's like them laying in bed, like, you know, kind of like not next to each other, but, you know, on opposite sides of like a large king size bed, almost like they're getting tucked in for bedtime and they're just like talking. And she's like saying, and they're kind of being like purposely like kind of like mean to each other in a way of just kind of like, it's funny. I can understand the appeal of it.
Yeah.
But there's literally no point to it other than just purely entertainment.
Yeah.
And I get that people want to be entertained. That's fine. But to compete with that is pointless.
Right.
You know? And so anyways, I guess going back to my point, it's like, it's like, I really want people to appreciate the point of what we're doing and what we have, because it's like, imagine, okay, I'm trying to think of an appropriate analogy. It's like,
Okay. While you're thinking of that.
Well, my point is, it's like people are trying to, the only thing I could think of was like an analogy of like food.
Okay.
It's like,
check this out. Because
go ahead.
yesterday I was listening to a song and there was some steel drums or whatever, and they're just playing some song. And then in the middle of their song, with the steel drums, they were like, dun, 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 dun. And I was like, oh, I recognize that. And I was wondering which song came out first, this or the Soulja Boy song, right? And so I looked it up, and then it said, oh no, they were just covering Soulja Boy. I was like, okay, cool. And then I looked up, because after I looked that up, it was like, here are some other songs that also covered or used a sample of Soulja Boy. And one of them was a Beyonce song. And I was like, what is this? So I clicked on it, and it's Beyonce live. And I'm like, oh, she probably just like at a transition used Soulja Boy. But I'm listening to it. And as I was listening to it, it was just like, you hear the crowd, you know, like she has this album. It's a live album, Homecoming, you know, and you hear the crowd and they're like, right. And like, she's singing this song. And as she's singing the song, it sounds nothing like the studio version of the song. Right. And what I mean by that is like, you know, it's not cleaned up. It's just, it's live. So listening to it in my car, I'm like, you know, it's whatever. But there's still this point I could sense of just like, this is really hype. This crowd is really into this. Like this, that would be like a lot of fun to be at this. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why would that be so? What makes going to a concert live so much fun when the music doesn't sound the same? It doesn't sound as good. You know, like you hear the recording artist's voice, sure, they can sing, but like, it's not the same thing as like the clean studio edit. And part of it is like, you're surrounded by all these other people who also really love this song or love this artist or whatever. And I wanted to bring this up because we're talking about brainwashing, right? It's like, you're brainwashed to like this song. Well, not necessarily, but you listen to the song over and
You
over. and over.
brainwashed yourself.
You brainwash yourself.
I mean,
to the
unless
point
you're that
where-
kid listening to fucking Sports Center and shit like that. He didn't do
Right.
it himself.
But you brainwash yourself with this music till you learn the words. And then it's like, you know, the artist can just be like, all right, you sing it. And you know the words, and you know that everybody else is going to sing along with you. So you don't feel this like resistance to singing out loud.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is also, and everybody else has the same energy with you and the same vibe. It's like you go to the concert because everybody else around you has also basically said, I love this song. I've also brainwashed myself with this music, and I'm going to enjoy it as much as you are. And so that'll enhance our good time. There will be nobody there who's going to judge you, or at least you don't perceive that in your mind, that you're going to be judged, right? Versus like, you know, why don't you just sing your favorite songs when you're walking down the street? Yeah. And of course, there's the element of the artist is there and all that, celebrity, blah, blah, blah. But just looking at the point of like what makes these events so fun when it's not the same quality as what you.
Because people can say, oh, it's just about being around other people. But it's like if you just had some random person you never heard the music of, you probably wouldn't. It could be good and you could still possibly enjoy it, but it wouldn't be the same thing as that particular experience.
It's not going to be the same. If you went to go see Beyonce with like, I don't know, a whole bunch of people who you like these people, but they don't know the songs. And you're like, oh, and they're like, yeah, it's good. It's good. And you're singing along and they're like, that would be awkward as fuck.
They're literally just watching you going.
Yeah, right? You know,
I want to show you this funny example of this point you're talking about. I just want to play a little clip first.
Go ahead.
Hold on, let me share the audio. Try not to get us into copyright territory.
Try not. It happens.
I'm trying to think of which one I want to play first. I think I'll play this part first. Okay.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just stop there. All right. And I'll explain in a second. So that's the original, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Which I don't know if you know that or not. Do you?
No.
Okay. Okay. So I was at Lowe's like last week or the week before with Seneca. And I heard not that song, but this other song I'm about to play a second of come on the loudspeakers or whatever. And I was like, what's this? Oh, here's the context. So like Seneca and I, a lot of times when we go somewhere together, it's just me and her or whatever, she'll always want to listen to Birdland in the car, right? By Weather Report. And then there's lots of other, it's a jazz band, so they have live versions and everything. And there's some that sound different or faster or different instruments. And we call those like the weird versions. That's what she calls them, right? Like, and she'll be like, let's listen to Birdland. I'm like, which one? She goes, a weird one.
Okay.
Or she'll be like one with words, because like Manhattan Transfer does a really great like version of it with words where they put lyrics to Birdland.
Okay.
So she'll be like the one with words. So we'll listen to one of those. So she understands the concept of a song having multiple remixes, versions, that kind of a thing. So we're in Lowe's, right? And this song comes on.
Yeah.
Okay, you've heard this song before, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if anybody recognizes it just from that, probably, because I'm assuming it's been on the radio and all kinds of stuff.
That's the song.
Katie did too. I was like, and I'm listening to it and I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it was obvious after a moment, like the singing, it was Coldplay, right? I'm like, this is a Coldplay song.
Yeah.
And I go, Seneca, listen to the music real quick. And she listens and I go, what do you think that is? She goes, oh, it's like a weird version of Computer Love, which is the first one I play, which is the Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
It's Kraftwerk. I mean, like what 4-year-old knows Kraftwerk? She doesn't know Coldplay.
Yeah.
Right? But just an example of that kind of point where it's like but like that's what we listen to. We have all the records of Kraftwerk. They like that stuff, right? So I just thought it was really funny because she like got it immediately, right? Yeah. And then when I got home, I did it for Max and I played the Coldplay song. I was like, "What is this?" And he goes, "It's Computer Love." Like they could hear it like that melody, and I looked it up. I'm like, "Did they fucking use?" People say they sampled. It's not a sample. It's more like they just took the melody or whatever. But
yeah.
I just thought that was really funny. But I want to go back real quick to this point I was trying to express earlier of like,
go ahead.
It was specifically around the point of phonics versus whole language, that whole debate. And because we talk about this stuff and I do like a lot of research stuff, I'm getting all these ads on Facebook for people selling, some particular phonics courses, and it's all talking shit about whole language. And this thing called synthetic phonics now. And it's, what synthetic phonics is?
No.
From my perspective, it's the it's the DID version of multiple personality disorder.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Same shit, different way.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, we use a blended, balanced approach because it's like people they're trying to get around the debate of is just phonics good? It's like, oh, we don't only use phonics, right?
Right.
But I was really looking at the way the marketing is done and everything, and it's like, even within all of the marketing, it's like, this is for children.
Yeah.
And it's not that what we're doing isn't for children, it is, but it's when they cease to become a child, all that other stuff is not for children. It's not for the adult. It's not for them. And I'm not, so what we do, obviously an adult can start with it, and you know that. But what I'm saying is, let's say the child that's doing it, at a certain point, you have some phonics program or anything, you stop because you're not a child anymore, right?
Yeah.
But then what do you start doing as an adult that's increasing your fucking vocabulary and reading ability and stuff?
Right.
You're like, what do you mean? I learned to read when I was in 3rd grade and I'm good. But you read beginning to read, which of course no one does. And she's very clear about the point, which makes perfect common sense of like, you never stop learning to read. I mean, you can stop learning to read, but you shouldn't. And there really is no such thing as I learned to read.
Right.
Because if I give somebody a book on quantum mechanics and they can't read it, what does that imply?
They can't read.
They can't read. It's like, what? They can't read it. Yeah. They stopped learning to read. It's like, well, but that's a different subject. What do you think reading means? It's actually, and this is my whole point, is how many people can read any subject?
Right.
And as a child, when you are learning to read, what subjects are you learning? Like, you're just learning some basic shit, and then they teach you phonics. So that way, when you get to all the new subjects, you can sort of manage with it to a certain degree anyways, know? And what I was wanting to show also that point with Max is like, look, they're already learning chemistry, biology, and not just we're pretending by giving him some kids dumbed down version. So it looks like it's like he's taking it and applying it to shit and recognizing stuff in the real world. It's not just a gimmicky sort of, oh, look, my kids are learning. Like, I remember I had this cousin or somebody, and they had a baby. This was a while back. And I remember they had a book at their house, and it was like quantum mechanics or calculus for babies or something, or quantum mechanics for babies. And it's like A is for antiderivative or, whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, it's not really a book for babies. And then it'll be like, f of x as of x plus 3 as x approaches L, and like, there's no fucking way a baby's gonna. It's not for babies. It's a gimmick. It's a joke. But if you put it there, it's like, oh wow, like my baby's learning calculus. No, they're not.
Right.
They're not. And so like with our kids, like they are learning chemistry.
The other thing about that is, whoa.
Hey Drake, we're going to grandma's house.
Got me. The other thing that I was going to say is, your kids aren't learning in the context of like in school, you have to take a test. And if you fail that test, you are a failure. And there's like, now you feel dumb because you can't learn. Your kids can learn literally anything. They're learning whatever they want to learn. And so they're directing themselves. And on top of that, it's like, there's no worry that there's anything out there that they can't learn. It's whatever they want to learn, and which allows them to go really deep. And plus, on top of that, like I remember, being in school, and even family members would be like calling me a nerd because I understood things.
Are they giving you wedgies in the bathroom at the family reunion?
I actually, yes. You just recalled some terrible memories. Yeah, no, I actually did get wedgies quite a bit from other family members. That's family. you know, but look at it. It's like just from remembering something, just from knowing something, just from being educated and actually having an interest in it. And what did that teach me is just like, okay, I don't want to be seen as a nerd, you know? So even if I have an interest in this, I have to suppress it around other people.
Right.
You know? Your kids don't have that. You know,
No.
and you know, I can point to a dozen other kids that are like, they don't have that. Why? Because they're actually being supported to continue to learn and learn whatever they want. And there's no stigma around learning. You know, they're not going to school, you know?
Yeah. And so like my point with the whole phonics, whole language thing, it's like, it's a false dichotomy, you know, because we were, there was a funny thing somebody posted. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It's on Facebook. I think Giselle posted it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. The I before E. Except
Here it is.
Yeah, the I before E. What
Here,
did it
I'll
say?
share real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. That was hilarious, actually. And I love all the comments on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You see it?
Yeah, I before
Yeah.
E, except when your foreign neighbor Keith receives 8 counterfeit beige sleighs from feisty, caffeinated weightlifters. Weird.
And like, check this out. I'll show you something really cool about that.
Christine immediately texts me, explain scientist hotshot, because she saw your comment.
Oh yeah, because somebody wrote, where is it? Where was it?
View previous 3.
Oh yeah, here it is. Oh, I gotta move this thing. The rule is actually, and I wasn't trying to be a smartass. I was just being funny because I knew this.
Yeah.
The rule is actually I before E except after C, which explains receives. The other 11 are spot on. I was like, explain scientist, hotshot.
Yeah.
And Max would love this one, and I showed him this one with Keith.
Yeah.
Because he has Keith in there, and he's like, I resemble that, right? He goes, I said, what you gonna do with all them sleighs? He goes, and I explained to Max the context of this, and then the context of why Keith wrote all this stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, write him, of course, through tough thickets of thoughts and dreams, thoroughly, albeit solely without souls and ghouls.
Yeah.
Right? So they're like laughing about this, right? And I wrote, ah, yes, dear fellow, and should a shroud of snow block your prow, slowly slough it off and onward plow. Max laughing. He was like, you guys are funny.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, look at these words. Like, why is plow and snow different? So how can you use phonics?
Right.
I mean, it's like, it's so interesting because what would a phonics advocate say about that? I don't even know. I need to look that up. Like, is there anyone trying to handle these objections about phonics?
Well, you know, it's the English language is,
or is it like they just have to learn more rules? Like when it's the P because of middle English versus classical Latin with the S-in derivation. And you're like, oh yes, of course. My child's going to become a classics expert.
Yeah, but look at slow, look at slow versus plow, right? Why is it not
right?
plow?
Right.
Yeah. And then why is that?
Snow, slow, plow.
Yeah.
Sloth.
Yeah.
But then we have tough. What?
Yeah.
Okay, that works. It's not slough.
Right.
But through.
Yeah.
Right. And
through, but thoughts. Right. Why thoroughly?
Through.
Why is it not through roughly?
It's
why
not
is it not
thoots.
Wait, hold on. Why is it not though roughly? Wait a minute. I see the word rough in there.
Yeah, shouldn't you be sounding it out?
If I were
roughly.
A kid, yeah, though roughly. Maybe that's how the word was originally pronounced. Though roughly.
It may have been.
Right?
They're like, we got to get away from this phonics shit.
Yeah.
Here, let me play this thing real quick. Okay, because I want to point something out. The only word Max didn't know in here is the word feisty.
Okay.
Right? He just didn't know that word yet. And I'm pointing that out because, again, we're not teaching him phonics. We're not teaching him. He can understand a lot of phonics. He knows phonics, actually, even though we haven't taught him using phonics, let's say. He knows phonics. Like he can tell you. But again, it's not anyways, he check this out. I was gonna play this audio real quick on my phone.
Go ahead.
I before E. Except when your foreign neighbor Keith received 8 counterfeit-based slaves from feisty caffeinated with weird.
Wow.
I before E. Except when your foreign neighbor Keith receives 8 counterfeit-based slaves from beastie feisty.
Right, because I was playing that one because I was
Yeah.
I was telling him it's actually feisty. Because
Okay.
at first he said feisty,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
he's trying to use some kind of level of phonics, like
Yeah.
feast, fiend, I don't know,
Yeah.
friend, like what?
Look at receives. It's E.
Right. So he,
No?
and unless so he didn't know the word feisty.
Right.
So I told him, do you know the word feisty? He's like, no. I said, okay, let's talk about what that word means, right? Then we go put it on Technotutor.
Yeah.
But before we had done that, we were just sitting outside. So he's like trying to remember, oh yeah, that's why he slowed down that first clip I played, because actually that one was first, because I told him it's feisty after I saw he didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so he was like, he was like 8 sleighs, and he was like, from feisty, because he was trying to remember. So you can see in that one point where you're trying to remember something or figure it out versus everything else, he knew all that.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to record it, to see what does he know and then show everyone that. So phonics wouldn't have helped him. Even though if you think about it, if he didn't know the word feisty, how did he even get feisty? Yeah. Because he's using what?
Phonics.
Yeah. He's actually using phonics, even though he wasn't taught using phonics. It's like phonics. If somebody sat down and studied all of the language and started coming up with some patterns here and there, that would be called phonics. Like, oh, let me write down. Okay, I noticed when you have EIs, this tends to be this sound, or this makes that sound, or whatever. They started writing all that down. But the problem is there was so many fucking exceptions. But they're like, look, at a basic level, this will help. That's what they're thinking. Right. And it's so funny because they'll be like, well, as soon as we got off of phonics, like our education just went downhill. And it's like, oh, our mass brainwashing enslavement program? Or did it go downhill also with the advent of technology? Yeah. Removing mothers from the homes. You know what I mean? Like all that shit. Yeah. Right? Like, is it, the mothers? Yeah. I gotta remember which community I'm talking about. But you see what I'm saying? Like, yeah, phonics, it's funny because there's almost this part where it's like you want to be like, well, I mean, it kind of helps. It doesn't fucking help. Right. It didn't help me. Like, oh, I learned to read. I mean, I learned to read before I went to school.
You know, what's funny
because I was like a little bit higher natural learning ability.
So there's that example of like there's a story and you're supposed to use, because you look at the story and none of the words are actual real words. But if you use phonics to read the story, you can kind of figure out it's like Little Red Riding Hood or something, right? But you're just using the
So they're not. So it's like you're reading pretend words phonetically, and you get the actual words it should be.
Right. But like when you try to read it, it's actually very fucking difficult. It's very challenging. Like you're looking at it and you're like, what is this? And you have to sound it out multiple times and kind of get the rhythm of it.
That's actually pretty cool. It shows you the actual experience of using phonics.
Right. And then like, I know you're saying it's pretty cool. It's in,
cool to show that.
Yeah, I know. It's in beginning to read. Read. You know?
I was trying to figure out how I can get a screenshot of that, but I don't have it with me in here.
I don't know, try Little Red Riding Hood phonetics, or I don't know, something like that. But like, as you're reading through it, it's like, it's challenging. You have to go slow. You have to like look at it a couple times. You're like, what is this? What is this word supposed to be? You know? And then once you go through it, it's like, okay, great. So now try to do that with every word that you learn, or every time you go to read. Imagine if you had to do that. The thing is, if you're actually learning, when you're at the young stage where you can actually absorb information, once you've read a word a few times, you should know that word. You should be able to recognize that word. And so then that's why then later on, technically, you can kind of many kids, I'm not going to say most, I'm not going to say all, definitely not all, but many kids then can read a little bit more, quote unquote, fluently, right? But if it was all just up to phonics,
but they have to have the vocabulary already in them.
Right.
And they can only be reading stuff that they only have the vocabulary.
That
So it looks like they can read more,
right?
But they're not. But then you look at all the research and they're like, but the best way to increase your vocabulary is to read stuff outside of your vocabulary. But then how are you going to sound that shit out because you don't know those words?
That's the other point that I wanted to make is like,
and she makes that point in the book, obviously.
Right. But, as you're trying to read it, it's like, you don't come to those words unless you already know kind of the story of Little Red Riding Hood,
Right.
You won't even come to those words like, oh, I'm supposed to say this word here. That's what's being pointed out.
You start to figure out, okay, I get what's going on.
Right. Right. And so it's really interesting because you cannot use phonics unless you already know the words, unless you've already at least heard the words before,
Right. And so what I want to show with that picture in that clip of Max is like, he's reading all those words. You didn't hear him sounding anything out.
Right.
He only hesitated on the one word, which I know he didn't already know.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess the point I was trying to make earlier is just that point of if people could come to appreciate the brilliance of what we have.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That what it's able to produce for a child is, because the point is, if you, instead of spending all your time trying to teach them some rules, which don't even work most of the time, what if you could take a moment to just learn the word?
Yeah.
And the problem with why people would have a problem with that is because they're like, well, but whole language doesn't work. That's been proven. But that's because you're purely relying on whether the child has a good memory or not, a mental memory. And that's not going to work because most people's memories are fucked. And also you've been put your kid in front of screen time, and why do they want to sit there? And it's just a matter of minutes. Yeah. You can be consistently, it's like, how long would it take to build 100 by 50 foot wall of bricks? Seems like it would take a long time, right?
Yeah, 100 by 50 foot. Yeah, that seems like it would be a long time.
Or 1,000 feet long.
Yeah.
Seems like it would take a long time, right? But what if you had 7 years and you did it brick by brick? Okay. You did like, 10 or 15 bricks a day or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just a finite number every day. Instead of trying to go like, I can't build that thing. It's like, well, if you just put a little bit each day, it accumulates. And then you can do more. Like Seneca asked me today, she goes, why is Max's list longer than mine? And I was like, well, he's a little bit older and he's at the higher stage. You'll get to that too. She's like, oh, okay. Right. And what did she was doing some words today. She did the word keen, Keen.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And she was like, I was like, do you know what that means? And she said, no. I said, because why would she know that word? Right.
Right.
So we looked at the definition. Right. And so we talked about it. And I said, and then I would use it in some sentences. Right. And she goes, what was the example she used? She goes, when you wanted to go, what was it? You wanted to go somewhere yesterday or whatever it was. I was very keen to go or something like that. And I was like, that was great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like she's 4.5, you know what I mean? So being able to build your vocabulary at that level and not having to rely on a memorization, like, okay, because the child can't even get to the point of using it in a sentence if they're still stuck on the point of this not even integrated into their memory yet.
Yeah.
So it's just a total 180 to the way everyone's looking at it. It's not a part of the whole phonics versus whole language dichotomy debate. It's just irrelevant, Yeah.
It's, man.
And then you can communicate at a different level with your kids. So it's like, because they have so much vocabulary, so much understanding inside of them. I was thinking about two things that Seneca, one thing she said to me yesterday or last night, she goes, we're in the kitchen and she had a doll. Like she has a couple dolls that she really likes to play with. And she goes, Cameron, whenever I can't find my doll, She just randomly comes and tells me this. She goes, whenever I can't find my doll, I don't freak out. I don't get sad and cry. I just, you know what? I just immediately start looking for where it could be. I was like, that's really cool. That's awesome. Like she just comes and tells me that, right?
Yeah.
And then yesterday, the kids like to ride around on ATVs, right? And so we do that sometimes in the evening, and you have to keep the ATVs maintained, so you have to ride them. Otherwise, like they just get fucked because of all the gas and stuff inside. It's the whole point. So, anyways, we make a habit of doing that, and so we'll just for a little bit run around after dinner or whatever, and so I turned mine on, and then I could see Seneca running out she actually was climbing over one of the like the back fences, like the backyard where like the garden is. She was climbing over the fence, and she's like running over to me.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed like she was a little bit upset. Like you could see she was like kind of like distraught a little bit. But as she's getting closer to me, she's going like, and she like gets over, and then she sees I'm not going anywhere, so she starts walking calmly over to me and gets on. And I could tell what was happening was she was in the house and she heard the ATV turn on, and she thought I was just going to go driving around without her. So she probably was like, in the past, she might have like started crying and maybe done some tantrum and been upset and mad, but she like was supporting herself. I could see that of like, I'm not going to go into a tantrum and just be mad. Cameron just going at me. I'm going to go out there. And then she saw I wasn't moving. So she was like calmed down and was able to come over it. It was really cool to see that at that age, especially, you know, and she's a girl, like for her to be able to support herself like that. It's so cool.
Yeah.
You know,
amazing.
So. All right. Anything else you want to add? It seems like we're at a good wrapping up point.
No, I think that's pretty good. Okay, direct yourself out of your mind. That's it. Okay, hey, listen, stop looking for other people to follow, right? Because
follow us,
and then we will show you how you can lead yourself.
Follow us from the perspective of listen, pay attention, test it out, apply yourself, but don't. And here's where following in that context gets people into trouble. You're putting the responsibility on the other person.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I was in this religion and they brainwashed me and all this bad stuff. And it's like, why were you in it? What were you looking for? It's like, why were you becoming a follower?
Yeah.
It's like you got sucked into something because your starting point was you want some hope, feeling, or, you know, salvation or some bullshit. And that's what they were offering
to take responsibility for you. That's
right.
it.
And that's definitely not what we're fucking offering.
Right. You know, that just made me remember the story of the Pied Piper, right? And like, is it pied or peed?
Phonetically, I'm going to go with, well, I mean, it's like pie.
PP on PP. Impediments. Right?
That's a great example. Like pied and piper have two different spellings, but they sound the same.
Yeah. Right? But I was reading that story, and it's so interesting because in that story, what happens is that just this story, and then you know, we can wrap up. But in that story, what happens is this town is overrun by rats, right? And all sorts of different vermin. They're on your food at night. They're sitting on your baby. They're like all over the place. It's to the point where people are just like, we live with rats. Rats are on us, and we just have to constantly brush them off. It's terrible. Nothing that we do is working to get rid of them. And then the Pied Piper comes along, and he's like, hey, listen, I can get rid of these rats for you if you're willing to pay my fee. Like, pay your fee? We'll pay 50 times your fee. Like, whatever you want, man. Like, just get rid of the rats. And he says, okay, cool. And then like he takes out his little pipe, I guess, flute, whatever, and he plays
his little pipe out.
Pulls his little pipe out. They're like, ooh, he's got a little pipe.
He's like, all right, guys, smoke with this pipe. And they're like, wait, what? He's like, I'm going to get rid of the rats.
You won't know what a rat is after this.
Next thing you know, like the rat's like this gigantic fucking thing, and you're like seeing other dimensions. And
but he plays his little tune, and the rats go marching straight off a cliff and into the ocean. And basically all the rats die except for one swims across the ocean, apparently. Whatever. But they all die, right?
Why was that part relevant? Why did
I
they make
don't
that in there?
know. I don't know. But they were like, woof, we got rid of all the rats. And they were so happy. And then the piper comes back and he's like, hey, my fee. And they're like, yeah, we're not paying you jack squat. You already got rid of the rats. We don't need to pay you anymore. And he says, okay, listen, if you don't pay my fee, there's going to be a consequence. Yeah, I don't just do this running around for free. And they're like, yeah, we're not paying you. Deal with it. And so he plays his pipe again. And then now all of a sudden the children are hypnotized and they follow along and they start walking towards the edges of the cliff and everybody screams and like, no, don't kill our kids. And then he plays another tune, a portal opens and the kids go into this portal and then they're never to be seen again. And now the whole town is just like, fuck, we should have paid the guy. We should have paid him what we said we were going to pay him. Like this is, oh, now we don't have our kids. We're so sad or whatever. And it served as like a warning to everyone else of just like, hey, you know, I guess the moral of that story was supposed to be pay the Pied Piper, right? You say you're going to pay a guy, pay him, right? But here's what I can take from it, right? Is you're trusting someone else to play a tune, to do things for you, like do the hard work for you, do the things that you don't want to do. And right now, your kids are caught up in that melee. They're caught up in the hypnotism of the screens, of whatever, the kids are saying at school. By the way, did you know that the average age, let me say this first. About 50% of kids get a screen, a phone with access to internet by the time they're 11 years old. About 50% of kids, right? About 20% of them get a screen, access to internet when they're 8 years old. And do you know what the average age of kids being exposed to porn is? 8 years
9?
old.
Oh.
Yeah, 8 or 9.
I was trying to average 9 and 8 or 10.
Yeah. But that's the average age. It's like,
I mean,
dude.
obviously, they're not finding your dirty magazines in your fucking closet anymore. That would almost be better, maybe not really, but it's like, here's furry porn, or whatever the fuck it is,
Right. Seriously. And so it's like, okay, this is happening right now. The kids are being, lulled away unless you take responsibility. Unless each and every one of us, there's a great audio that I listened to on the parenting series. And it was posing basically the question of like, are our kids really the future? Is it really our kids that are the future?
Right.
And the answer is no, because they're just going to do whatever you brainwash them to do.
Right.
And so really,
I mean, they are the future, but in the context of, are they going to be some like different, like the hope is on them for them to do better. And it's like,
right.
What?
They're
so
not
then what's
gonna
the
be
point
our
of
saviors.
education? Why even put them in school then if they're just going to magically somehow come out different?
Right.
It's like, no, we got to do exactly the same thing that was done to us. And then hopefully that'll change.
Hopefully they'll just have some new thought. Like, no, we're the ones who have to put that in place for them. Right? We have to change for them so they can have a real future. It's on us. The responsibility is on us. And that's what I want to leave with, right? So yeah, follow us, as in listen to what we're saying. But at the end of the day, the responsibility is on you. It's on all of us, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to make the world best. And we're here to take on that responsibility. So this podcast is for any of you who are willing to take on that responsibility to actually investigate your own mind and support yourself so that you can create and guide and direct yourself and your mind to be most effective for you and for the world at large, for what's best for everyone. So yeah, we'll leave it at
That's
that.
it. See you next time, everybody.
Okay, bye. Bye.